First, we started out by taking out all those nails and hardware out of these 2x4s that were actually studs in the house of my in-laws that they bought in town. We were demoing some walls. Here you got some insulation on there. I had to break those down to size. I actually stopped in the middle of making the shelves to make this little phone holder. I had just gotten tired of trying to lean my phone up against anything that was around, trying to get the right angle. So if you guys have anything during projects that consistently slows you up, just take a second. Probably just be easier to build something quick. Doesn't need to be pretty, just functional. Here I'm cutting the cross lengths that'll link between the studs. You can see those little black marks on the pieces behind me. They're actually also the furring strips from inside the walls, also from my in-laws' house. When you're working by yourself, a brad nailer is going to be one of the most helpful things because it can act as an extra set of hands. Only thing being, make sure you know the length of the nails you're using as well as the thickness of the materials, because you could have a pretty bad day when you nail the material to your fingers. So keep that in mind. Depending on the quality of work that you desire, most of the stuff I use is reclaimed wood, so being square is going to be an approximation. So I usually set one screw on each side so there's room to adjust and then get it to 90 and then drive that second screw home. I can't recommend sourcing free or cheap lumber enough. It really is a great place to start if you're looking to get into the hobby and don't want to invest too much. You know, a lot of the tools you can get are expensive once you get into the power tools, but if you're just doing fun, rough carpentry stuff, a drill, a handsaw, and hammer, nails, screws can get you pretty far along. Hope you guys appreciated my sweet reaction speed there. Um, Catching those legs falling, it's pretty much bound to happen when you're working by yourself. Here, instead of measuring up from the ground and trying to make a mark line, I'm just using a scrap piece of wood cut to the height that I want. This helps by also basically balancing and supporting that beam as I'm trying to attach it to the correct height. And this is even more helpful on the long beams. Obviously you can see it's holding that far end to the correct height, and I'm just making it flush with the sides as I'm doing right there. And then I'm going to tack it in before going back and drilling and screwing in the screws. Now, pre-drilling the holes might be a little bit overkill, but I'd really rather not split these furring strips when using reused material. Sometimes they're a little bit weaker and more prone to splitting, so just a little extra work to save you a headache down the road. So this is an example of some of the wood I've got in abundance on the farm. Pretty weathered, been used and had a full lifetime before, and some people might trash it, but there's some good lengths you can get out of these boards. Just gotta be creative in where you're using them and also be realistic. Not getting fine furniture out of this, but again, if it's going to be wooden structures outside or things you don't care so much about the finished look, this will be just fine. Okay, so take note here where my left hand placement is. That's the number one way that folks hurt themselves with a circular saw. I was cognizant of that and had my hand set about 8 inches behind the saw, but still bad habit to get into. You get careless, and that's how accidents happen, so learn from my mistake. So these old weathered boards were actually tongue and groove in another lifetime, so They fit together pretty neatly. Just gonna repeat the same procedure for the other shelves, tacking it in and driving it home with screws. Anytime I've got less important projects like this, I like to try to reuse some old hardware that my grandfather had laying around. Coming to the end here, I ended up with 3 shelves, not including the top, and finished up with a rough sand at about 100 just to get out any of those major splinter spots. Definitely got to be careful around this wood though, it'll get you. So here's our final look with the lights in place. I probably should have done some plans because I made it too big and it doesn't fit in our basement. So now it's just taking up our entire sunroom, but it doesn't really matter too much because I didn't pay anything for materials, so I could chop it down to size if I wanted tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Check out the channel for other projects like this, and see you soon.